Welcome to another episode of the Erik Heijn Academy podcast. I'm your host, Erik Heijn. I studied human movement sciences at Groningen University a long time ago, and later on organizational psychology. And today I work, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, as a teacher at the University of Applied Sciences and the Department of Physical Education. So these are students do a 4-year educational program to become, how do you call it, physical education teachers.
Hmm.
And some people move on to university. And besides that, I have a history in police and military training. So in the 2 days I'm working for myself, I'm doing that. And Rob has been a great inspiration in that sense. And today I talked this with Rob Gray. And Rob, you are, I hope the bio is still correct, a professor at Arizona State University.
Hmm.
Well, you do this for a long time. You wrote two very inspiring books in this fast material, How We Learn to Move and Learn to Optimize Movement, and also your latest book about how to coach it.
Hmm.
Well, I can go on and on, but I think most people here in the Netherlands also know you from your Perception Action podcast,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
for my students at the University of Applied Science, it is a resource by itself because what is more informational than someone who knows, breaks down articles and so on. So Rob, thank you so much for joining.
Well,
Did
my
I?
pleasure, Eric. I'm glad we could do this finally.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I will. I have how do you call it? I've asked many people around me to ask you a question. So
Okay.
that would be a nice way, and I shared a question with you.
Okay.
Because that's for me also, if it's possible. Yeah, okay, here. So it's from all kind of people, and maybe you can see the question here.
Okay.
Yeah, you also see the question?
I do. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so the first question is, this is from my first year students. In their first year at the Academy of Physical Education, they are introduced in motor learning, and we give a big overview with all kinds of motor learning approaches. But I'd like to be a little bit more concrete. So these are some questions from my first year students. So how would you teach a beginner their very first boxing jab or cross using a constraint-led approach? And then there are some
Hmm.
follow-up questions like, what if mistakes happen? Should we intervene and so on? And when do you give back in this approach? And maybe we can also compare it with other approaches, but is this a clear question for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Okay.
think the key point for me is right. You want to start having a jab or a cross is driven by information from your opponent, right?
Hmm.
There's opening. They create an opening, so you not a bag or a mat or something up. So what we want to do is get to that as much as possible. So I'm a big fan of things like playing tag, like tapping each other on trying to tap the person's shoulder.
Yeah.
That helps the kind of natural stance of boxing to emerge on its own, right? When you got to protect your own shoulders. So the constraints there is the game we're playing, the rule, what it takes to your goal you're achieving.
Hmm.
Um, so we take the punching in the face out of it, right? And
Yeah.
and, and we try to make it. Um, so that's where I would start. Where there's lots of things you can play with. You could play with what the opponent's allowed to do. Whether
Hmm.
they're allowed to fully defend or whether they, defend only with one hand or things like that. You can change the spacing, things like that. Um, the second question, mistakes. That's a critical. Critical thing is as a coach. How do you define mistake,
Yeah.
right? Because they're not doing it the ideal way that you were taught, right? That's not a good definition in my opinion. If they're doing something, you as a coach, they're not being successful
Yeah.
in the outcome, achieving their goal. They're doing something that might get themselves hurt or get the other person hurt, right? Those are reasons to intervene, right? I think if they're really strong kind of things that potentially could hurt someone, then I would step in with an instruction, right? Step in with a constraint. You
Yeah.
can't do this, right?
Yeah.
But otherwise, if they're, their footwork's not ideal, they're not getting a lot of, good force transfer, then I would play with, the spacing, the starting positions the angle of their opponent, things like that, to get them a bit more things.
And say, for example, one mistake, if you can name it like this,
Mhm.
is that they don't keep their hands high
Yes.
enough at the chin. So, and we know if they are going to spar, that they need that. If you see that, what is the CLA approach doing with that, or can you just give feedback, keep your hands high?
Yeah, I think like the way we think about it, instruction in CLA is it's just another type of constraint. It's it's something designed to take away a certain solution someone's using and push them towards something else. So I think there's nothing wrong with saying why make sure you keep your hands high,
Yeah,
right? But other ways, we can reward, you can change the rules so your opponent gets a certain number of points or the game ends as soon as they tap you high on your
yeah,
shoulders or something. So motivate that behavior. That's a
yeah,
better way to do it if you can.
yeah,
But I think in the, if you the fastest way, why don't you? I think the language you use, like, why don't you try, or not using a strict command. You have to do it this way.
yeah.
So, so
And
yeah,
and
I think there's lots. So basically, what can I think? What can I add to this activity that is going to take away the solution of keeping your hands low,
yeah.
right? That's the idea of the constraints that approach.
And
Um,
can we just
mhm,
explain why this is important for first year students?
mhm.
Uh, what is the premise? Is that a word? Premise? What is
First,
the
yeah.
yeah? What is the philosophy behind what you're just telling now? And for example, an approach they learn in Amsterdam kickboxing schools, like keep your hands high and doing the punch in before a mirror or whatever.
Yeah.
What is the major difference and why?
So they're punching on air or back. So the key difference is, right, we're teaching them at the same time, we're teaching them how to jab and when and why to jab, right? They're teaching them the information from your opponent when their right hand is low. That's when I do like a left, like, so they were teaching them the decision making, how they're actually going to use it in context at the same time, instead of teaching them the technique first and then trying to plug it into the actual thing later. So I
Yeah,
think it gives a bet, and we're given them the opportunity to have slightly different movements, right? And
yeah,
not strictly you have to punch with your foot this here bent 90 degrees. We're allowing for them to adapt to their own individual strengths, and they experience why hopefully when they lose if they keep their hands low, they keep losing the game. So
yeah.
so that's the main thing, right? Trying to keep it in context, keep it not separate, pull the technique out of the actual context
So is this a
of boxing.
form of, can we call this implicit learning? Or
I get, yeah, a lot of people would want to connect it with it. So you're learning how, where your hand position, your feet position kind of implicitly rather than someone telling you
yeah,
explicitly stand this way relative to your opponent. Yeah, so a lot
great,
of people try to make that connection.
great. Thank you, Rob. And
You're
next,
welcome.
yeah, next question is from Noah. He's in the second year, and oh yeah, the question is, what is the applied difference between CLA and differential learning in teaching a skill? A little bit context. So
Mhm.
the students learn about all kinds of motor learning approaches,
Okay.
and also about differential learning. And especially here in the Netherlands, because we have in the Netherlands at University of Free University, there is
Hmm.
a group, they have a method called Athletic Skills Model.
Hmm.
It's by Gerard Savelsberg,
Yes.
and it is heavily influenced by differential learning from Wolfgang Schulhorn.
Yep.
And we even have, yeah, so differential learning, and they have CLA. And of course, there can be all kind of theoretical differences, but is there a difference, and how do you see it in practice?
I think so. I think for me, uh, constraint side approach is for that you have some idea about the solution you want the person to move away from or towards to, right? So if I'm taking the boxing example and the person's standing straight without any, shift in weight, they're standing straight on to their opponent. I want to add something that's going to push them away from that solution
Yeah.
and get them to try things. So constraints-led approach is more kind of purposeful manipulation of something in the coaching, the practice environment. Differential learning is also manipulating constraints, right? You're manipulating so differential learning, you cover one eye, you might have a person stand with right foot back, left foot back.
Yeah.
That is not, you're not necessarily moving someone towards a particular solution or an area of solutions. You're just getting them to explore a wide range of possibilities, right?
Yeah.
And really so in the constraint set approach, we probably want you to get this to do the same constraint over and over and over. So we might
Yeah.
set the shoulder tapping game with the different, whereas differential learning is really, in its purest form, is doing a different thing every single time,
Yeah.
right? A different variant. So you're learning, basically, differential learning, I think it's really valuable. It's you're learning about the relationship between my movement and the outcome in the
Yeah.
world, right? When I do this, what happens, right? Which is hugely valuable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they both have their place. They're just kind of different.
Can we say it just goes in my mind that in both approaches you want to be you want to develop problem solvers and
Yes.
being adaptable.
Mhm.
That's the same how do you say it, philosophy in a certain way. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think so. I think for sure. I
Yeah.
think that's the adaptable problem solvers. Yeah.
Yeah. If it goes too fast, Rob, you have to
Oh, no
say
problem.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
it was good.
This is a question from Mark. Oh yeah. Uh, in the Netherlands, we also have the teaching games for understanding approach. It comes from, how do you say it in English? When you play a game. It was
Hmm.
developed in, if I'm correctly, in England, where they found out that if you just drilled the techniques, all the children were bored and they didn't like it. So the teaching games for understanding approach, the students and here we give a game like softball, volleyball, soccer, and so on, and they also learn teaching games for understanding. And the question from Mark is also, what is the concrete difference if you do the teaching game for understanding approach versus CLA? And for those who don't know the teaching game for understanding approach, it is, if I'm not an expert, but what I see is first you have to know what a game is, what proper solutions are. It focuses, I think, on tactics and on asking questions, if I'm correct. But
Yeah.
do you know the method, by the way?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I think they're both constraints that approach and teaching games for understanding are very big positive changes from traditional drilling. So I like them both. They're similar in a lot of ways, but the difference is the understanding, right? So in traditional games, just teaching games for understanding, there's a lot more emphasis placed on the athlete or the performer having explicit understanding of why,
Yeah.
being able to explain. Like when you're learning a tennis serve, you want to serve, tennis forehand, you want to move your racket in like an arc. Understanding why you do that and being able to explain it explicitly, that's a really key, important part of teaching games for understanding the tactics, why I go here, why I go there.
Yeah.
Whereas in CLA, we don't really think that explicit understanding is necessary
Hmm.
for having that. You just pick up information. You're reacting to your environment. So it's a pretty subtle difference, I'll admit. In a lot of cases, in applied settings, it doesn't have a huge difference. I guess it's just how much you place on explaining. There's probably a little more talking and explaining a drill
Yeah.
beforehand in TG than we'd want in constraints led approach.
Yeah. And in the UK, and maybe even in Ireland and in Scotland, there is Professor Chris Cushion,
Hmm.
and he developed. This is nice for police instructors. He developed scenario-based training, and I think
Hmm.
it's now a standard approach in the UK, and based on teaching games for understanding, scenario-based training. So if you want to look it up, I think we move on to police. Yes. So
Hmm.
Rob, last week I gave a lecture at the police academy here in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
about all kinds of things, but also about there has been a very big research program here in the Netherlands from Wendy Dorrestein. Her dissertation is called Beyond the Split Second. And one of
Mm-hmm.
her key findings was that in training, we must offer more realistic problems and more realistic solutions to make a match
Solutions.
between training and. So I gave this lecture and I talked about a lot of things. And one of my, uh, how to call it, messages was if we talk about realistic problems and solutions, we can look into CLA as a, well, to give it, how do you, to
Mm-hmm.
make it more practical. So that was a big part of my lecture. And then I got all kinds of questions. And um, maybe I can show you the figure here. This is
Mm-hmm.
the Dutch police model where we move in practice from knowledge and skills to role playing. This is a kind of drill to scenario training where there is a lot of information and decision making. And this is not black and white because the people who
Mm-hmm.
developed it, they developed it for just for, imagine you are a police officer becoming an instructor. In a short time, you have to have some, how do you call it? Something to hold on.
Yes.
So yeah, but what also can happen is that sometimes people get stuck in the knowledge and skills and almost doing no scenario uh, and so on. So I don't want to represent this model in a bad way because it's a in a
Mm-hmm.
developing curriculum we move from scenario to what kind of skills we need. But this is the traditional, let's say the traditional approach.
Mm-hmm.
So the question now is, say, for example, there are recruits who are wanting to learn to do a two-on-one arrest on a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in this approach, we gave them some knowledge. We learned them to handcuff, physical control, and so on, and then later on move on to scenarios. That would be a very, very, how do you call it, low,
Mm-hmm.
basic approach. How how can you do it in another way according to the CLA approach?
Yeah, so the CLA approach, the biggest differences are probably very much downplaying the first part. Like usually that's isolated, decoupled skill drills, right?
Yes.
Firearms shooting on a range,
Yeah.
teaching handcuffs versus opponent that victim a subject that's fully cooperative, right? Those so teaching them the correct technique and things like that. So there's growing body of research that I call it the fundamentals first. We're going to teach the fundamentals of shooting, right? You need
Yeah.
to have this foot here, this, right? Um, there's a growing body of research within sports that the fundamentals will come out on their own, right? Even if you start those role play. I just did one. We just had a conference with, I was involved in a wrestling activity
Ah,
2-on-1. And so this is Chris Butler's work. I think you've probably had him
yeah.
on your podcast. So we started immediately in the actual role play scenario. And what we did was instead of pulling it out and him telling me what I need to do, where I should grab, how I should do a person, I just started doing it right away. And he basically, I guess it would fit in that role play. The subject kind of scaled up. So they were just standing there doing
Yeah.
nothing with their arms up. So it was easy for me. I still made mistakes. I still, they kind of pointed out, changed the constraints based on. So one of the things I did is I got way too close to the person,
Yeah.
and so they changed the constraints. And then the person was being way. They're supposed to be a tree, so it was a bit harder to get the. And then we're scaling up the difficulty, but always keeping it in the context, rather not having the person kind of be uncooperative to different degrees. So that's the kind of the first difference I see, downplaying that isolated skill drill phase.
Yeah.
The second thing, the real advantage of constraints that approach, I think, with scenario, it kind of tells you what do I need to be in the scenario and what can I leave out, right? If I'm going to train a scenario of active shooter response, do I need everything in there, right? Do I need real firearm? Well, it depends on what you're trying to train. If I'm training room entries, right? What can I leave out? What kind of the key pieces of the term we use representative design.
Yeah.
What needs to be there to do I want to develop that skill? So that's kind of the two ways. I think scenario training is a fits wonderfully with a CLA. And just it's a way to kind of logically manipulate it and add little changes to their scenarios to kind of get the things you want and skillful.
Can you just explain what the difference is between realistic, realistic training, reality-based training, and the more difficult term for laypersons, representative
Yeah.
training?
So I like to distinguish between specificity and representative. So specificity, way it's mostly defined is things have to be the same as they are in the actual scenario.
Yeah,
You have to have someone firing back at you, gunfire, all the exact same thing. Whereas in representative design, we try to understand more what do those things do to you, right? The loud noise makes you it causes things you can't communicate as well. So we get a shot box that's making the sound of
yeah,
gunfire, right? Um, so we try to understand the information that people are using to perform their actions, make sure that's there. What the action is similar to what they're doing in the actual real environment. So there's a few key criteria we're looking for. Then everything is the same. In in my sports example, right? If we wanted to practice, we should always practice. There's no way you can create in your situations. There's no way you can create the pressure a police officer faces
no,
in a real scenario, right? We can't recreate that. So what does that pressure do to a person? Can we recreate those things?
yeah.
And so yeah, that's the idea.
So can you say that if you use the term reality-based or realistic training, that there can be a kind of thought that it should be as realistic as on the street, which leads
Yeah.
us astray? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, realism. I guess it's suggesting that the in sports example of this would suggest the best practice is just playing the game, right? Because everything that's the most realistic,
Yeah,
right, scenario is actually playing the game. But that is not you're not. For example, if you're trying to teach someone a certain thing, they're not going to get enough reps
yeah.
of
If
room
you only do
entries.
the game,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's going to happen two times or something in a huge long scenario.
yeah,
So what we do in the constraints led approach, how can we take the phrase we use a slice of the real thing
yeah.
and focus on that? So that's kind of the idea. Yeah.
What is the minimal representativeness you
Okay.
yeah, so if you just scale it down, scale it down, scale it down, let's say in the example of arresting a suspect, what should be
Mhm.
the minimum?
The minimum. So we want the information that the person uses in the practice activity to be similar in the real thing. So I want to be arresting a person, right? Performing the action against a person that's opposing my move in some way,
Yeah,
right? So I want there to be. I want the important thing. I want to not be know exactly what I'm going to do before the activity starts, right? The opportunities unfold, emerge, and decay in real time, right?
why
So
is that
my opportunity,
important?
the unpredictability, because it getting the decision making,
Yeah,
teaching you to be adaptable
yeah,
instead of performing a move on air that you can do
yeah,
the same thing. Having to be able to adapt to the person is critical. Having a similar action in terms of the timing, the forces involved, I think
yeah,
is important. And I think having some sort of emotional consequences, a little time pressure, those
yeah.
are kind of the key things for me.
I have a hypothesis.
Okay.
Maybe you can shoot on it.
Okay.
So, I 15 years ago, when I was a police instructor, I developed an idea called ODA-proof training,
Okay.
and I
OODA
still
loop.
ODA loop proof training,
Mhm.
and I still like it because I think it also resembles what you are saying. So I also thought at the police academy, if the ODA loop is present in your training, you have a kind of representative design because
Mhm.
there is observation, there is information, there is orientation, there is decision making, and there is action. So um, what do you need more? So do you agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, I think so. I think where people would push back on the traditional OODA loop is that it's a very linear, you perceive, then decide, then act,
Ah,
right? In ecological dynamics, all those things are happening together
hmm,
simultaneously. But I think the general idea is great, right? The traditional idea is that we're going to teach you the action, the raw technique,
Yeah.
then we'll teach you to decide when to use it later on. And then, right. So having them all there, I think that's the key idea. So yeah,
Yeah.
your key hypothesis, I think the essential idea is the same.
Okay. Well, I'm delighted to hear that. I have
Yeah,
another.
so I would say one of the things I would say about this, one of the ecological dynamics is the tools used in this like scenario-based training and is not new. Small-sided games and sports, it's not new. They've been around forever. Good
Mhm.
coaches have been doing. It's the kind of the framework that ties it all together is what's relatively new, and so
Yeah.
that's a
I'm
different. Yeah.
I'm also curious as I talked with Wolfgang Schulhorn about it. He had some hypotheses about it. Why in some approaches there was such linear group training. Like for example, I come from traditional martial arts, Wolfgang also, and in karate, and I think in most of the Japanese styles, there is
Mm-hmm.
if you want to watch a traditional approach, is there. It's
Hmm.
isolated techniques with hundreds of people at a
Yeah.
row.
Drilling. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this happened in other movement practices, maybe in gymnastics in Europe a century ago, but where did that method come from? Because on the other hand, on Okinawa, for example, they teach one-on-one. And in the Chinese
Hmm.
martial arts, they also taught one-on-one. And there was also not the idol technique, but it was the person and his preferences. So do you have any idea where the...
Yeah, so I think it has permeated a lot of other sports. People kind of push back that it's a straw man. I see it everywhere still in all the kids' sports. They teach them how to do a proper technique for shooting a basketball with no defender. Um, I don't know. I think Wolfgang's much better on the history of all this than I am. I think it's just kind of the kind of some. I've heard some people claim it's kind of like the industrialization of skill, right? We
Ah,
can break it into pieces, train it, put it back
yeah,
together. That I think that's where that idea came from.
that's a plausible,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm not an expert in the history of it. He's much more informed than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my talks last week, I went to the workshop, gave a workshop, and then how do you say it without naming some names? There was a guy from the Special Operations Unit,
Hmm.
and he asked the following question. Well, he was impressed by what you can do with CLA and so on, but his question was. Police teams, like his work from trained procedures and clear roles and tasks. So, like for example, doing a clearing of a building, there are 8 or 10 men, and they have all their roles and so on and so on. How would that training look like from a CLA approach? Because the traditional approach here is, well, there is some, like some information in the classroom that there are all kind of roles and tasks and so on. Then we practice the procedure, and then later on we run the procedure and building in all kinds of constraints.
Yeah.
Do you have any other suggestions for team?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a move. So the way you're describing is like running a scripted play. Like you
Yeah,
go here, you go there, you go there. And then we might teach you variants of that based on the situation,
yeah,
right? The problem with that is, especially in policing, there's a million possible variations that could happen in a real scenario. Real, how could you possibly prepare all the different variance in so the idea of the ecological approach, what we instead of running a scripted play where you're told where to go, we want to teach you to learn to pick up, for instance, everyone to pick them up together. The shooter on the roof affords me I'm affords I need we need to get cover, right? So we're all learning to pick these up at the same time and kind of and work coordinate our behavior in the based on the information in the environment rather than a play that a coach has told us to run. When you get here, go there, go behind this cover. We want to go purposefully go behind based on what the scenario is telling us.
Maybe for me, then it's maybe more clear for me because this is too much people involved now. Say for example, I also work with emergency medicine medics, and
Hmm.
they have their resuscitation protocol. Here in the
Hmm.
Netherlands, it's called ABCD. They do
Hmm.
their the breathing, whatever. They have a procedure.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think that when they this is just what I think when they learn that they learn the steps A B C D, and of course in
Mm.
real life if something happens you disperse from that. But what I find difficult to understand is if you have many people in a team and you don't know where the other people are going to move, or is that not what you are saying?
No, yeah, we're not gonna tell people where to go. They're gonna go to places based on what they see. So, right where I've witnessed this one in just one. So moving down a hallway
Yeah,
in a perfect diamond formation as a team,
yeah,
right? Being told where to go and when. Instead of that, we're gonna allow the people to move but we're going to emphasize key principles to them, right? We need to keep space. You need to cover people, right? So they're going to pick up the environment. This person moves there, so I should go here, right? So they're still going to coordinate their behavior, but based on in sports we call it principles of play,
yeah,
rather than telling them you go exactly here, you do this. So I think what you're describing in terms of medics, right? We're teaching them the key kind of things to look for, airway, right?
yeah,
We can still kind of teach them and the key important things to look for, and we're just not teaching them the exact procedure, right? Do this with this thing, then this thing, then this thing. First, check is airway clear, right? Any way you want to do that, right? Not any way, but obviously we need to do it in certain ways. But
yeah.
yeah, so that's the idea to allow people to pick up from what the environment, and this is Gibson, affording you, what the environment is offering you, both negative and positive, right? I can go in that room that I can get cover here. I can get building entry here. And if we work together in practice, then we get team coordination because people are perceiving those things in the same way at the same time. That's the idea.
At the end, do you see a kind of the same? So, for example, say that the diamond structure is a good one. You like
To
yes. Say for example that that is a good tactic. Let's
mhm.
assume that. But if you're just processing information and explore this, is the outcome the same with the CLA method? Bedoel, I mean, do you see the same kind of coordination anyway, or
Sometimes, yes, for sure. You
okay,
see sometimes the same, but I think it comes back to again to define what you mean by good, right? If they achieve the outcome, right? They get down the hallway, no one gets hurt, like then that's how we want to define good by the outcome,
yeah,
the goal, not by some form, right?
yeah,
Not because they moved down in the hallway in a diamond, right? There's
yeah,
no inherent reason to do that. If it achieves their goals, right?
yeah,
And they're covering each other and things like that. So
yeah.
that's the idea. Yeah.
So
Moving away from focusing on specific forms and
yeah,
techniques to focusing on achieving your goals and outcomes.
and the same person also had the example of the principle of slicing the pie, and I'm not sure if you know that. The slicing the pie is if you move around a corner, you can do a little bit step back and make a kind of angle, so you see the danger before the danger sees you.
Mm-hmm.
So you see him and he doesn't see you, and you're not get shot, and so on. And his question was, it would be for me, it's far more easy to tell people that beforehand, before they go into the procedure. But the other way, when I was an instructor, I also let them discover it themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
I say, well, move around the corner. There's a suspect maybe with a gun, and try what works. And then, yeah, of course, if you're not abiding to some principles, you get hit with simulation, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah, I think so. I think we're talking about, we want you to explore the room before you enter. So you can, again, we're telling you the kind of outcome, the overall principle, right? So you have information about where the shooter is before you go in the room.
Yeah.
But we're not telling you exactly how to do that. We're not telling you run up to the door, stick your head out 10 degrees, right? That's
Yeah.
where a lot of people want. We're not telling you exactly the details of how you achieve that,
It's a
right? And
kind,
I
yeah.
really, I find, when people learn the why themselves, it's so much more powerful
Yeah.
than when a instructor tells them.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, let people discover it themselves whenever they can.
Yeah.
Have someone there with a, little, weapon, whatever, they get, tagged, right? Um, they'll learn. They'll learn about just barging in a room.
Yeah,
But yeah.
and in my own experience, that what I've learned myself is also kind of more embodied, deeper learning, in my
Hmm.
own experience. Because if you got shot in the head in training, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
You remember,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Okay.
so. And I think, I think there's certain like non-negotiables, like when you're teaching new recruits, there's certain gun safety
Yeah,
rules,
of course. Yeah.
right? You have to jump in and stop, right?
Yeah.
You can't run in a room with your hand on the trigger or your
No,
finger on the
no,
trigger,
of
right?
course. Yeah.
Those are non-negotiable things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There's another question.
okay.
Here, okay. So, briefing is an important part in police and military operations and thus in training. This is also one of the key findings from Wendy Dorrestein in her dissertation that uh, briefing is important, but it is not very good done in training and even not in practice. So
Mhm.
that's why her dissertation is called Beyond the Split Second. Better prepare pre-contact. And then as another example from training is what we do in the Netherlands is before two people make an arrest on one other, they make at least a little plan, including the goals, risk, and roles. So, what are we going to do? What are some risks, and who's talking and who's observing? This can be done very fast, of course.
Hmm.
Even in their certification, if they do the defensive tactics certification once a year, they are obliged to make this little plan beforehand. Um, in ambulance, emergency medicine, when we're driving to an incident, they are doing the same. It's called pre-arrival preparation, when they make a little plan. Not making a whole big plan, but because
No.
when you're there, it can be otherwise. But and the question was, how would this pre-arrest briefing look like in an ecological dynamic approach?
Yeah. No, I think the way you describe keep it, it would be fairly short, like you're describing. There's two things I think we'd want in a pre in the briefing. We want to there's we call educate intention. What is good? What is your goal here? It's surprisingly we don't do that. What is a good rep going to look like, right?
Yeah,
Is it to get all the way to the person and take down the shooter? Is it to have good proper movement down the hall? Whatever. So predefine what your intention is,
yes,
and then the other one is called education of attention. Try to get people looking and directing their to where the dangers might be, where they need to by saying, you have to make sure the room, just by your wording you use. So I think the lines, also the roles, right? I'm going to be the one that if the person moves there, I'm going to go for them,
yeah,
things like that. So I think, but the biggest one for me is having a clear intention of what I'm trying to do in this activity,
yeah,
what I'm trying to achieve.
yeah. Can you
And it
also,
doesn't,
yeah,
the other kind of a coaching method is we don't always have to make the ultimate goal, the final goal, the intention, right? If we want to build stuff, we can just say, I want you to move down that hallway quickly
yeah,
and stay in a couple. That's our intention for this time. We'll work on the other stuff later, right?
yeah.
Like so, yeah.
So if I understand you correctly, if I'm going to teach those officers to make an arrest on some suspect, and I ask them to do a little briefing, pre-arrival preparation, I could ask them, what is your attention? Sorry,
Hmm.
what is your intention?
Yeah.
And
What are you trying to?
yeah, what are you trying to achieve? And the other question they could answer by themselves are, for example, uh, where are we going to look for? What is important to
Yeah.
watch out for? Is that
That's
correct?
perfect. Yeah. Yep. For sure. I
Great.
think to go with that, I'm a big fan of questioning afterwards.
Yeah.
Like what was in that room that you passed, right?
Yeah.
If you see that they didn't look in it at all, or did you check that was that door locked, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Yeah.
Great. Um, I'm not sure this is a too difficult question. This was from one of military friends. Um, well, the question is in military work, hierarchy and command intent are essential. How does that fit with self-organization and emergency of skill? So the question is, can an ecological system still function within a chain of command, like a briefing from a commander or so on, or does command itself disrupt the very adapt
Oh, I
adaptability?
think it can. I think you're right. As long as the commander is, they're giving the intention. Here's what we're trying to do. Here are the key principles, right? We want to get in this building and stop the shooter. We don't want any of our officers to get injured, right?
Yeah,
Or we want to take care of injured people. So they're kind of directing people's their goals and what the key principles are. They're not saying we're going to enter this room like diamond formation. They're
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
prescribing a technique of how you do it. They're
yeah,
prescribing the overall what. What do
yeah,
we want to achieve? Yeah. And
yeah.
that works perfectly well, I think.
Great. Um, oh, this is about. I think this is about debriefing. Yeah, debriefing. Okay, so I've done a podcast with Professor Victoria Brazil. She is the leading
Hmm.
professor in emergency medicine and simulation. She has a great podcast by herself.
Hmm.
And I found her quote very informative. That is, any experiential learning needs a reflective process after the session to make the most of learning. This is her statement, and for now, I can agree with that. Um, and in policing, military, and emergency medicine operation debriefs, including self-reflection, are important after action reviews, and so on. And the question then is, and I try to puzzle it out by myself,
Hmm.
how would debriefing, including self-reflection, looks like after a simulation or a scenario following an ecological dynamic approach?
Hmm. Yeah. So first of all, I agree with all that. It's really important. I think getting people involved in the learning process themselves is powerful for engagement and motivation. So I agree with that. But kind of a couple of things. One, the debriefing, we one is we want to focus on more, not so much. One is I like to have people kind of think about how they would respond. So how they would show me how you would, what would you do differently in terms of just saying, answering questions verbally. So I like to put kind of that in the middle of practice, almost a bit of that stuff.
Hmm.
So I have, the you missed this up. What could we have done differently here? Let's show me how. Show me right now. That kind of thing, and then also a little like less emphasis on kind of factual knowledge about in the reflection. Oh, we did this formation, we did this. More about kind of being awareness, like the things that what did you see in that? What did you notice in this, or what did you? What was
Yeah.
your experience? So those kind of things. So
So,
just a little bit different, but the standard questioning, all the rules for good questioning, open ended, directing people to directing their attention to different things they might not have noticed,
yeah.
still apply. I think. Hmm.
Can you do this is just improvisation, or but can you also recap the things we asked in the briefing, like because we asked them where to place your attention.
Hmm.
Can you in the reflection also come back to that? What did you
Yeah.
saw? Where was your attention? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Did you, what noticing, getting them to emphasize points for sure.
yeah,
What was in that room that you walked past, right? Getting them to so I kind of like you think about directing them to opportunities and information in the environment rather than did you have your were you supporting your gun with the other
yeah,
hand, right? Rather than focus on the technical
yeah.
aspects.
So Pete Blair talked about the four P's from John Vercake: participatory, proportional,
Hmm.
or something like that.
Yeah,
So I can imagine that in a debrief that kind of particip participatory, sorry,
sorry. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, no problem.
that kind of
Just
embodied reflection.
mhm.
Is that what you are saying also?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and we don't, and yeah, your experience, your through your interaction with it is much more powerful than just stating factual knowledge. Like
Yeah,
this, sometimes there's a in Gibson, the knowledge about is kind of factual information. Knowledge of is how do you actually do it,
yeah.
and that's what we want to focus on more if we can.
Would a kind of post-scenario visualization or mental rehearsal also be a good thing? Because you can ask them to
Yeah.
visualize or imagine how they would do it.
For sure. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Yeah, you could how visualize how you would do that differently, or how you would take that opportunity, and I think visualization is very powerful. It's just tough because not everybody's good at it, right?
Yeah.
Not every so it's sometimes a bit tough to use, but I think it's very useful.
Can we also kind of guided
Hmm.
imagery like in the debrief like
Yeah, yeah.
walk yeah,
Imagine you're walking down the hall.
again, yeah.
The room's locked. What do you? Yeah,
Yeah.
what would you do? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, great. I have two more questions if you
Okay.
are not tired.
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay. This is a question from Ruben. He is a colleague in emergency medicine in the Netherlands on the ambulance, and also he works a lot with in hospitals. And his question is as follows: in emergency medicine, we place emphasis on shared mental models through briefing and debriefing. And how would this, so this I think is shared mental models, how would this look like in a CLA approach? And before moving into that, so in emergency medicine, the briefing and debriefing are really, how do you call it? In police, it's okay, it's there, but
Mm-hmm.
in emergency medicine, they have all kind of scientific underpinnings, like they have the Pearls method, the Steinbach method, the Diamond
Mm-hmm.
method. It's very protocolized, and because there are a lot of simulations, and in that simulations, in many of those protocols, there is an emphasis on share your frame, so your mental model.
Mm-hmm.
What was your mental model moving into the
Mm-hmm.
whatever it happens? Um, how does it fits in or not with the CLA approach?
Um, Not so in CLA, we want to shift the idea from shared mental models, which is the shared internal, usually if this, then I'll do that kind of thing, to shared affordances, which are people picking up from the environment, the information, the same opportunities at the same time, right? This
Mhm.
person is going to crash. We have to act. Everyone perceives that at the same time and they act upon it. So it's less about things stored in memory, rules, right? That the idea, it just makes for a very fragile system, right? Because again, I don't think how can you possibly anticipate every possible outcome that could occur, every situation that occurs? So you're not as versus picking up things from the environment as they unfold. So that's the kind of the shift we'd like to make.
And how does it look like in a debriefing? So, for example, in the shared mental models, you can ask, you sit with a group and you ask things like, uh, uh, what did you see? What did you think? How did you perceive that? And so on. And then all the people say what they perceived and so on. How does this differ
It would
in
be partially similar. So yeah, what did you notice at this point? Um, Again, I like to do it. Okay, show me what you would do
Hmm.
different, what you could have done differently. Actually, get them to physically act it out um, in a scenario or something, rather than just talk about it. But yeah, so less emphasis on what were you thinking. What? more on what did you notice? What would
Yeah.
you how you would reacted, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
So
So
it's a fairly subtle difference. But
yeah. Um, so I will show you the picture. I'm not sure if you can see it. So this is the dissertation from Wendy Dorrestein, and
okay.
here on the left, Beyond the Split Second, Police and Military in Training and Action. Her research, it was enormous research program here in the Netherlands, both in military and police. She
Mm-hmm.
watched a lot of hundreds of scenarios, and she tried to compare it with what happens on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things she came out with was the model on the left, on the right, so realistic solutions, realistic problems. And the question that we already answered it, but my question to you was, if we look at the realistic solutions and realistic problems, would ecological dynamics be a good, how do you call it, way of practice this? Because these are only terms, and how?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I think the picture on the puzzle picture, that's basically you capture the four key components of representative design there.
Mhm.
Stimuli, the information is the same. Danger, there's an emotional context. Realistic solution, we call that action fidelity. Realistic problems, there's multiple decisions and opportunities that emerge and decay. So yeah, I think that fits very well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will.
Mhm.
Great for Wendy also.
Yeah, have a look at yeah,
Yeah.
representative learning design.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I think those are good in police. That's a perfect way to represent it.
Great. Then I have a question from Jeff Quayle. You had him in the podcast already.
Hmm.
And Jeff, his question was, are you now aware of CLA concentrated approach firearms training programs like his gun sparring? So since you spoke with him, are there other programs developed with regard to firearms training? Are
I'm
you,
aware of that one. Yeah. Um, I think so. I think people are building off that, like some of the stuff Pete's doing, like room entries and things. Firearms training is basically using the same similar. Just put people in the scenario itself.
yeah.
Constraints led approach. Yeah.
We already talked about it, when intervention
Hmm.
becomes necessary. What do you, yeah, I don't want to put you on the, how do you call it, on the spot with this question, because but there is a lot of discussion about how much you practice on the range and how much you practice, for example, with simulation and so on. When I was a firearms instructor, I did a lot of simulation training,
Hmm.
or with how do you call it, paintball guns and so on. And my observation was that it looked a lot different than on the range.
Yeah. Yeah.
People fell. There were all kinds of movements, so much different than the range. But is there any? Do you have any thoughts about this?
The question there, the
Yeah. No, sorry. The question
the
about
yeah,
the
I think
balance.
that
Yeah.
stats people quote sometimes are, shooting accuracy on the range is 80-90%, and then real scenarios goes down to 30, right?
Yeah.
Something's different between those two things, and we should try to close that gap, I think, by having more, there's so much variability, uncertainty, and practicing it, and it's not going to likely transfer to when you have a perfect. And it doesn't mean you can't. Like there's ways we could use the range, change the angle, change the distance, change your stance, change
Yeah.
lots of things. Have a matter decision making component. So I don't think you have to completely abandon it, but just probably less time and more scenario based. Having someone firing back at you, even if it's paintball,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
hugely changes the whole situation. Yeah,
Influences a lot, eh? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And last questions. These are a kind of fun questions, but what is the best book you read in 2025?
The best book. There's one I've been reading some like on. There's one I'm reading called. Well, I'm doing my podcast. I'm reviewing Michael Turvey's book. This is not for the faint of heart. It's very. Like it's called Lectures on Perception. It's very deep and involved. There's one called I think it's called Scale. It talks about how these all dynamical systems kind of approach applies to so many different things. How different. So I've enjoyed reading it. I thought it was well written.
Great.
Um, I like Malcolm Gladwell's books too.
Yeah.
I just finished David versus Goliath.
Oh, I didn't know.
Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
good.
it talks about how things we perceive as weaknesses are often strengths and vice versa.
Oh, that's
And it's
great.
really I like the way he writes. It's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about books. You have your books behind you.
Hmm.
The last one, the ecological
The advanced,
approach. Yeah.
yeah.
What is in it? Why should we buy it?
The ecological, that one I tried to talk from. So the first couple of books are what means to be skillful from an athlete's
Yeah.
perspective. This one is mostly how you can coach in this, what it means to be a coach, talking about, coaches have constraints on them too, right? When you do a police workshop, you have a certain amount of time. Like the police training has huge constraints. You have to get all this information to people in a very small time window. You have practical constraints to every extra round you use and expensive and things like that. So understanding those and how to adapt your coaching within that. That's the idea of that book.
Great. The next question is, what is the best article you read in 2025? A scientific article. Not maybe the
Um,
best. No, no.
yeah,
Let's reframe it. The article you
yeah,
were waiting for, it came out, and you thought, "This is great. This is
yeah.
very inspirational."
Um, I've been doing a lot of I've been doing a lot of research on injury, how we get
Mm,
injured and how we get. There's one I think it's called critical fluctuations. It talks about, how systems fall apart, and it talks about like in nature and the economy, and it's really powerful, and how epileptic seizures are predicted by kind of these critical changes in behavior. So I thought that was a really interesting paper. Yeah.
Now about your own podcast. What is
Yes.
what is the most interesting podcast you did by yourself? And the second follow-up question is, if you could choose, even from history, a guest from your podcast, who would it be? So two questions.
Um, So yeah, the it's funny. I'm sure you get the same with yours.
Yeah.
Some I feel like are really great, and I loved it, and you hardly get any attention. And other ones I didn't think were the
Yeah.
best, my best work, get a lot of focus on them. I think the kind of series I did on constraints, that approach, that working through it, I think I was happy with it. And I've kind of done um tributes to some of the key people, like a Bernstein episode
Yeah.
and Gibson and stuff, so I like those. um the interviews, I have a person again, I should have Keith Davids, who's one of the main people in ecological. I'd love to have him back. It's been a long, long time. So
Mm.
Wolfgang Schoen was very, very interesting, very
Yeah.
intelligent guy. Like he
Yeah.
taught like things that I'd never even thought of. Why people call it degeneracy and things
Yeah.
like that. He taught me. I learned a lot from him just talking to him. So
Yeah, he also
I wouldn't mind.
he
Yeah,
talked about about India, and I cannot even in India, and with yoga and all kinds of practices. He
yeah.
how do you call it? He
Hmm.
integrates. Okay.
Yeah, and your former supervisor, Peter Bake,
Ah,
we were that close to having him on the show at one point. I've had to try again, so
yeah,
he
yeah,
would be great to talk to,
yeah.
because
He will be
he's
great.
been doing this for a long, long time, right?
Yeah,
Studying juggling and a million different ways to apply this.
yeah.
Very, very, and he understands it a way higher level than most people. So it'd be great to have him on.
And he
Yeah.
recently wrote, because 10 years ago he wrote a 10-part series here in the Netherlands in
Mm,
Dutch about new insights in motor learning. It was our
mm,
first introduction in all those methods like external focus, blah blah blah.
mm.
And now recently, a year ago, he wrote the update and
Yeah,
also a 10-part series. And it's a you can do a lot of impact with that. It's great.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. He's a very, very smart guy. Yeah.
So with your podcast, how this is all, I mean, it's a lot of work, I think. I know because I do it myself.
Yeah, it is.
You don't get paid for it that much.
No, I don't know if you had this. It's opened up so many opportunities for
That's
me.
true.
Right. I've been doing research on my main sport I work in is baseball. I've been doing it for years and years, and no one content. Then as soon as I started helping disseminate and helping people understand this, there's a real value in that. People really appreciate it. So I
Yeah,
got a lot more people. Okay, why don't you come out and watch our team practice and that kind of stuff. So yeah,
great.
and it's been great, and it makes me dig into things like I never would have had this. The work I'm starting to do with police would have never arisen. I
No.
don't think about any out of that because I don't do any research on that myself. So it's I really enjoy it. I've slowed down a little bit
Yeah,
recently.
you also,
I used
yeah,
to I
yeah,
used to do weekly, but I've kind
yeah,
of slowed down a bit. I'm getting busy. But I think it's really and it makes me dig into areas I wouldn't probably think about in my own research. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm
great.
happy. It's been great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much
You're
because
welcome,
it
man.
inspires me also. And did I forgot to ask you anything, Rob?
No, I don't think so. I think that's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I say goodbye to the listeners. I say goodbye to you offline, Rob. So thank
Okay.
you for listening to the podcast and see you next time. Bye bye.